Okay, yeah. So we are recording and we are live. So into the introductory phase, I'll start with my name. My name is Agin Elvis. You can find me on Twitter at LVSCIAGIN. You can find me on LinkedIn at Agin Elvis, or you can follow the link on the slide to get to know more about me. I hope everyone can see the slide, or anyone can see the slides. I've shared my screen, so if anyone can see the slides, can maybe just give me a thumbs up, and then we can proceed. Cool. All right, so it's a very brief introductory session, maybe just your name and something interesting about you or what you do or something of the sort, just in less than 10 seconds from everyone that's here.
I'll get started then. My name is Zilan Pang. I'm the Director of Finance Administration for Mozilla Foundation. And I actually used to, in a prior career, work for one of the biggest banks in the world. So I'm actually really keen to kind of hear about the practices that occurred here.
Cool. Anyone else? Now I just want to let us know their names and something interesting about them. Lewis, maybe?
Hey everyone, I'm excited to be here. My name is Louis and I'm currently around Black Moors Fest. I'm glad to see you all here.
Oh, nice to meet you too, Lewis. Agatha, Jane, and Charity. Oh, I've seen Agatha's text on Slack. Software engineer, farmer, and singer. Excited for the session. Excited to have you here as well. Quite not seeing my end, so I'll text. Sure. If you're unable to speak, you can as well just text and we'll be able to read them on the chat. All right. Lewis, can you see my screen? Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. All right, so now that we're done with that, let's briefly move into what actually brought us here, which is we are focusing on our topic today on humiliation and desperation. So maybe just to give a brief overview of what we're trying to talk about, we are trying to look at people who've been taking loans in developing countries and how they're being humiliated in their desperation, basically in their point of need. During their point of needs, we are finding that they're being humiliated when it comes to getting these loans. So we've gone through the introduction. So now basically just a brief background of what's happening is that the concept of money lending has been in existence since forever. So since the commencement of trade, people have been on occasion found themselves on economically unequal situations where one cannot always afford what they want. So that's actually for this reason that early civilizations will have farmers borrow seeds from, let's say, someone who had them, with the promise that when my crops actually thrive, then I'll be able to give you back the product. So, or they'd borrow livestock, and then once the livestock maybe give back, then they'll be able to give back whatever they have to whoever they got it from. So now over time, lending has become more sophisticated, now leading to the creation of banks, issuing loans to borrowers at interest, and then the growth of the banking sector now has necessitated heavy regulation to protect and guide sector's players and balance risk and opportunities in loan transactions. So basically, we're trying to see is how the development of banks, how it has come to be. So we are looking at it from the point of initially early farmers being able to, because they didn't have the initial capital to go farm, what they would do, they would go to someone, ask for seeds. Then once they got seeds and sowed them, when their plants would come up, then they'll be able to pay back whoever got them that. That was how we came up with the issue of borrowing or lending. But then over time, it has led to the creation of banks, and this has now gotten giving us the other issue of regulation. We need regulation to protect consumers and to guide sector players as to balance risk and opportunities in loan transactions as well. So how did we get there? In our topic, so we are trying to talk about humiliation in desperation. So maybe just to give a brief history of the focus in Kenya right now, there are two key issues I want us to confirm, to look into. So there are two key dates. The first date is September of 2016, and the other one was in 2019. So something happened in the Kenyan sector in September of 2016. What happened was that Kenya introduced a legal cap on commercial lending rates. So what does this mean? It means that in 2016, Kenya removed the legal cap on commercial lending rates. So prior to this, the CBK had set a maximum lending rate of 4% above the benchmark central bank rate, which is CBR. So this was basically aimed at controlling the cost of credit and promoting financial inclusion. However, it ended up having kind of a negative effect. The effect in this case was that it ended up slowing down private sector credit as commercial banks turned their backs on millions of low-income customers, as well as small and medium-sized businesses, which they deemed too risky to lend to. So by setting a cap at 4% above central bank rates, it meant that everyone who didn't have a credit rating or a credit score above a certain score, or the SMEs that didn't have what the banks categorized as commercial power to borrow and return the money they borrowed, they were left out of the banking segment. So then subsequently, what happened was there was a credit crunch where people needed money, but they didn't know where to get it from. Banks were not willing to give that money out to SMEs or to give that money out to someone who just wants to go and get a new, go to the farm, maybe get mangoes in wholesale and then come and sell it retail and make a profit. So when this cap was introduced and it was set at 4% above the CBR, there was a credit crunch that was triggered, and it triggered an appetite for digital loans. So this one now is where the digital lenders came through. So they were giving people a new proposal. They're coming to the market and telling you, okay, fine, you can't get a loan from the bank, but here's what we can do. I can give you a loan. You don't need collateral. You don't need to give me anything at the moment until given 24 hours or less. You just need a mobile phone and internet, and I'll give you the loan. And then you'll pay me back at your time. Then this is now where we got this whole digital lending apps thing coming in. So what we're calling digital loans are basically credit obtained by mobile banking, such as in Kenya, we have a few examples of them for purposes of confidentiality and for not tarnishing anyone's name. I won't be able to mention any of them. But if you right now, if you have a smartphone and you go to Google Play Store, if you're in Kenya as an example, if you just search for the word loan, you'll get hits on hits on hits of numbers of applications. And if you look keenly at the number of downloads there, it's quite alarming. So the selling point here is that they're giving you quick and repayable loans to boost sales. And then now looking at it keenly again, we figure out that borrowers, remember I told you to check the dates of September 2016. Now in 2016, we only had 200,000 borrowers in the digital space. But when that cap was initiated, it now grew from 200,000 in 2016 to 2 million in 2020, 2 million borrowers 2 years later in 2019. So what happened in 2019 was that the cap was scrapped off. And then at this point now, banks and digital lenders were told they just have to justify the expensive loan pricing that they have. So I don't necessarily have to tell you to have your rate at 4% above the CBK. All I need to tell you is you have to justify. If you're going to charge 22%, then give a justification for why you're charging 22%. So between 2016 and 2019, we saw the number of borrowers grow from 200,000 to 2 million. Now, if you look at it keenly, now we're still on the issue of how do we get here. If you look at it, the central bank lending rate in Kenya right now stands at 12.77%. That was as of January 30th of 2023. Now, comparatively, if you look at the rates that the other banks, the other digital lenders are charging, you'll find that there's one in Kenya that charges an interest rate of up to 19%. And this 19% is dependent on the size of the loan. And then another one charges up to 17.6%. And these ones are just the ones that are charging almost, I'd say, low rates. There's one that charges 40%. So that's around, if I do my math correctly, that's around 28% above the central bank lending rate. And then if a recent survey by Business Daily also showed that one in every 50, out of every 100 Kenyans, you find 55 had acquired loans from these digital lenders. And then 66% of them were urban dwellers, which could be attributed to the fact that in the urban areas, the cost of living has significantly gone high. So they need to get more money and more money flowing. Or you could also look at it in the form of in the urban areas, there's need for a lot of money flowing to trade and everything else. Then alarmingly, we found that most men have multiple digital credit providers or digital apps on their phones. So we could have one man with 4 digital apps. They could have A, borrow from A, borrow from B, borrow from C, and borrow from D, which then later on, as we'll see during the course of this discussion, is they borrow from A, default, go ahead, download B, default on that one, and the cycle continues. Whereas if you look at the same data, women were more loyal to a single brand. Now, whichever way you look at it, that's up to you. But then also another thing that we're also seeing is that most users of these digital credit subscribers are aged between 30 to 34. Now, Kenya, as it is a relatively young economy, if you look at it in terms of age, and 30 to 34 is where normally the middle class, I'd say, are found. So these are guys who maybe they're like 10 or 5 years out of the university and now they're into their career and they're just starting to make ends meet. So these are people who need a lot of money, and this is where now the allure of these predatory lending applications come in, because they don't have the credit standing or the credit score to go to a bank and secure the exact amount of loan. Now, I'd like to highlight that throughout this session, we are not campaigning for people to default on loans. What you're saying is get loans, pay them, but when you're taking, what you're telling the digital lenders to do is when you're reclaiming these loans, kindly do it modestly, do it in a way that upholds the integrity and the morality of the people you took the loans from. So up to there, I'd like to ask a question to the group. If any one of you has come across, let's say, these applications, or know of a friend or a colleague who've been in a situation where they've either taken a loan or taken a loan from these credit apps, and then these apps are there asking them to pay up, blasting their phones, humiliating them. Just if any one of you has been in a situation where they've either seen this in action or know of someone who's had this happen to them, I'd like to open the floor up for anyone who'd like to share. Just unmute, and then we'll be able to get to hear from your end before we go into looking at examples of how this has happened in the actual market. So if any one of you in the audience has seen or knows of this happening in action, then they can be able to let us know and what their thoughts on it are. Maybe ask Lewis, if Lewis is available.
Yes, it hasn't happened to me personally, but I remember hearing about it at last year's Mosfest. I think it was at a different space, but it was someone from South America complaining about the banking apps doing the same.
Oh, okay, nice. Or you can also be able to send your replies on chat, can be able to read them over there. If you're in an OC environment, you can be able to join the chat, and then I'll be able to read the chats from there. I'll just give another second to anyone who wants to contribute, and then we can move on to the next bit, which is the impact. To basically see some of the ways these loan apps have been humiliating and embarrassing their clients, I'd say. In just a second, anyone wants to contribute? Or maybe I'd ask a question to Zilan, I guess. I hope I'm pronouncing your name rightly. Is this an issue in your country or where you currently reside? And how have you guys been able to maybe sort it out?
Well, I think speaking broadly, I think predatory lending practices takes place like all over the world, and there is strong kind of regulation on the U.S. side to try to prevent like such practices. But I personally kind of haven't seen stuff like this happen.
Oh, okay, nice. Hayley, I guess. I'm just choosing randomly. It's okay if you're not in a position to speak. I'm just choosing randomly. So Hayley, maybe give us your experience. Have you heard of this happening in the country you are from or where you are currently residing?
Hi. No, I don't. I mean, as you said, predatory lending definitely happens. I'm in Canada. We don't have the mobile apps in Canada, like we're quite behind, but have heard of friends in other countries, including Kenya, who have used them, but I didn't know about these kind of negative aspects or the humiliation tactics. So I'm interested to hear more about that.
All right. So as an example, there's one that charges an interest rate of between 7 and 19 on any facility issued to customers for a period of 30 days. Now, I want you to notice the fact that it's 30 days. The 7 and 19% is not an annual interest rate. It's an interest rate pegged monthly. So if you do your calculations rightly, you'll find that if you now extrapolate that annually, some of these interest rates are going to crazy figures, up to 369%, I guess. I saw that would go up to 369% of what you borrowed if you were to now do that calculation yearly, because there's one in Kenya that does their current interest rates at 1.08% per day. So if you borrow $100, if you have to pay it tomorrow, you'll pay it at 100 times 101.08%. And then another one charges 36%. Remember, the CBK credit average lending rate was pegged at 12.77% as of January of this year. So these people charging 36, 365%, 27%, and it's also based on the facility amount and the repayment history by the borrower. So one of the enticing things they do is they'll let you know if you borrow and pay within a day, we won't charge you anything. So, but if you default, then that's where the issue comes in. And again, remember, we're not campaigning for people to default on loans. We're basically campaigning for people to take loans, but the lenders to be moral about how they take back their money. So if we have a look at maybe just, let me look at one chart over here. Oh, it's from Hayley. Okay, I've seen your message. So if we look at the next slide, which are basically going to be talking about the impact. So this slide and the next few minutes of this discussion will be on actual case studies of people who've experienced what we are currently campaigning against, which is predatory lending, humiliation, depression, mental anguish that these lenders impact onto their customers. So this, if you can see my screen, that's an image of a bus in Kenya. They're called matachus, and that's an advert for one of these apps. I've blurred it out. And see, it's a very big sign there on getting on Google Play, then choose a lender you can trust. Now, I want you to be keen on the writings here. One of the things they're saying is choose a lender you can trust. Why are they focusing on the word trust over here? It just goes to show that they are aware that there are unscrupulous digital lenders in the market as well, and they're aware of the kind of predatory practices that these other lenders are having. So that's why when they're campaigning, they're telling you to choose a lender you can trust. But most importantly, I want you to focus on the writings on the left. The hatutakuanika. Hatutakuanika is a Kiswahili word. More, I think it goes more towards the side of Sheng. But what it basically means is we won't air you out. That's why you can see the hanging line and the clothes and everything. So it loosely translates to we won't air you out. Now, if you say kuanika in Kiswahili, what it basically means is in most concepts, it's embarrass someone. So if you anika someone, you're basically embarrassing them. So if you see a digital lender campaigning and what they're using to campaign is a jab at either their competitors or a practice that they know is in the market, then you know that there's a problem that they even themselves, they know is currently happening. So their campaign slogan here is Atucha Kwanika. So basically, we won't embarrass you. So what are some of the cases that we've had, some of the stories we've had as regards digital lending and the impact they've had on people's lives? So for that, I'd give you a few case studies. Now, in 2020, a 32-year-old Kenyan woman, we'll call her Wambui for this case study. She committed suicide after being, or was a victim of suicide, after being harassed by debt collectors from a mobile lending app. Now, she had taken a loan of 20,000 shillings. This translates to about $190 to $200 current rates, but was unable to repay due to financial difficulties. Now, remember, the loans, how they're structured and how they market them is, these are loans you can get in 24 hours or less. Use it to grow your business. So if you're going to get something in wholesale in the morning or at the market, get it in wholesale. By midday, you've already gotten your money back, and then you're able to pay. That's why when they're giving you the loan, most times when they're marketing their loans, they'll say, we won't ask you for money for the first 24 hours. So now this woman ended up borrowing money, 20,000 Kenya shillings, but was unable to repay due to financial difficulties for one reason or another. Now, according to her sister, the lenders would call her repeatedly and threaten to publish her personal information on social media if she didn't pay back the loan. Now, that's just one case. Another case is on Twitter. I saw it a while back. I was trying to look for it for the purposes of this conversation, but I wasn't able to find it. It's a case of someone where it's like a case of, I'm trying to get the right term for it, this denial of service attack. It's these people, they're people who are in a call center and they've been given a target. They've been told, call so and so and so and have them pay us back our money. So for them to be paid, you have to pay back. So what they end up doing, they'll give your number into a system that just automatically calls and calls and calls. So you can't use that phone for any other service. It just keeps on calling and calling and calling. And then when that doesn't work, what they do, and which is like the area that you want to really focus on for this discussion, is they end up, because when you're signing up, remember, the terms and conditions, mostly you're desperate for this money because it's an issue that you want to sort out immediately. Or it's just give an example. How many of us will actually go through every fine print in the terms and conditions of every app that we download? Mostly if you're in a desperate position. So in the terms and conditions down there, they probably say, when you default, we'll call your contact lists and ask them to pay on your behalf. So basically what they're doing in this case is forcing someone in your contact list to be a guarantor to you. So if I borrowed money, for example, right now, and in my contact list, there was Charity. She's in this call right now. What will happen is, if I default, Charity, Agatha, Lewis, Zilan, Brian, everyone on my contact list will be told that, hey, Agin hasn't paid this amount of money, please tell him to pay. And some of them go to an extent of saying, or you'll have to pay on his behalf. Remember, when I was taking the loan, it was between me and the app. Now, this whole scenario of bringing you guys in And remember, it's my entire contact list. So they'll now contact my entire contact list and tell them I didn't pay back a loan and I should be able to pay it back. Or these contact lists are now my default guarantors, and now they should be able to pay, or else now they will be listed into CRB. CRB is the Credit Reference Bureau. I'm just not aware of its equivalent in the US or in Canada, but that's exactly what they're doing. So now you can take an example of a situation where you took money to maybe buy medicine or buy, let's say, food. You are hungry, during COVID and everything, everyone was laid off. So you needed a place to get money. So you took money, got medicine or something. And then on a Monday morning, you took the money on Friday. On a Monday morning, when you get to work, everyone is looking at you weirdly. So I'm assuming you're also like in a kind of a senior position. So you can imagine everyone in your contact list, including your juniors, knowing that you defaulted on a loan and that they are now obliged to pay on your behalf, or else they will be listed in the CRB. So those are just two examples of what exactly is currently happening in the Kenyan space. And because the people, remember I told you, these companies will hire another company with people whose main target is to just call and ensure they're like telemarketers, like quote unquote telemarketers, but their main goal is to call and make you pay. So these companies don't necessarily have any relation with you. So what they'll do, they'll go to any extent to have you pay back. Remember, because for them as well, it's a matter of payment on commission. So the more people I can get to pay back this money, the more money I'll get. So what then some of them go doing, they go to an extent of calling you, the borrower, a thief and saying that to your contact list. So they'll call someone like Agatha and tell them, hi, did you know Agin is a thief? He took money from us and hasn't paid you back. Can you kindly let him pay? I'm even using the word kindly there loosely because those calls are never kind at all. Now, if we go to another example, and this, weirdly, when I was doing research for this, I found that it's not only in Kenya as well. In Indonesia, a guy called Ade also had to take his own life when he was unable to pay a loan from a lending app. Now, the app had been sending threatening messages to the man and his family, demanding payment and threatening legal action. Now, remember, again, we are not campaigning for people not to pay loans. We're just asking them, the lenders, to be considerate in their ways of paying. Now, lastly, I'll give another example of, in 2019, a guy called Mutiso in Kenya shared his story about how he was humiliated and harassed by debt collectors for mobile lending app. And hear this, his amount was only 300 Kenya shillings. That translates to about $2. But he was unable to repay it due to financial difficulties. Now, the lender would call him repeatedly using abusive language and threatening to come to his workplace and embarrass him if he doesn't pay back the $2. So what he ended up doing was he took another loan to pay a loan. So he robbed Peter to pay Paul. And now this other loan started the same tactic. So it was it's a cycle. So what then ends up happening is you find a lot of youth and a lot of people between that age bracket in a cycle of debt that they can't escape. So you borrow from one to pay another, then you have to borrow from another to pay this one. And remember, the cycle is the same. Whenever you borrow, your contact list is blasted out. So they say you are defaulter, you don't pay loans, they call your colleagues. You can imagine a situation where you're going to propose to your girlfriend and your in-laws look at you like, oh, so this is the defaulter. It's not a nice scene, if I'd say. So I'd like maybe just to hear your thoughts on this. And as we move forward, probably, how would you suggest that we go about this? That what suggestions could you give as regards how we could mediate this current scenario? Oh, okay, I'm reading a chat from Voina. Hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Okay. So I guess it's not an issue that started out recently. It's as far back as the 19th century when they would hang outside your window. Wow. Yeah, so you see what Voina is actually raising here is the use of automated systems and natural language processing systems to figure out these people based on their Facebook posts or something like that. Then they know, so they know who they're targeting and they know that their chances of defaulting are very high. Remember, these apps, they also make their most amount of money on you defaulting, not you actually paying. Because in the fine print, you'll find it's 1% every day, 1.08% every day. But if you default, some shoot that figure up to 3%. So you end up paying 3% daily for a loan simply because you defaulted on it once. So yeah, I've seen, thanks Voina for that information. Anyone else? Basically, how do you think we can then mediate this? Or do you have other scenarios that have happened to you? I'll just pick
Okay.
randomly. Yes, please.
It's Voina here. I'm not sure. I'm on mobile. Sorry for crappy voice. Sorry for not revealing my my persona. I'm just changing my nickname and on every chat. Before
No,
I
it's
was
okay.
part
It's
of,
okay.
you may understand. I work in the industry, but I'm on the good side. In very short, there are very much automated systems, the opposite of credit scoring, that is anti-credit scoring, that build up your virtual persona to see your vulnerabilities. And there is automatic chain. There is like 20% of human actors. Look up the Cambodia and Chinese who are captured in Cambodia and made prisoners. I'm not making it up. And they are just building the very detailed persona system to find your very vulnerable points. You can just, I can paste the chat in the chat, the actual article. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, please. You could do that. All right. Anyone else wants to have a say? Anyone else? Okay. I guess if no one else has something to contribute, we'll go to what does the law say? So normally when we are faced with issues such as this, let me just read another chart. Oh yeah, Vaina sent a chart over there for the cyber slavery inside Cambodia's online scam gangs. So if you have time, you can maybe just have a look at it. So I'd advise that you save it, because once the chat ends, we might not be able to find the link. So if you are interested, and I'd advise all of us to be, kindly just have that URL and save it for later. So moving forward, normally when you're faced with this kind of scenarios, our first go-to place is the law, because most coming from democratic countries, what we are figuring out is if we are being wronged, then the first go-to point of action is what does the law say, or what caveats do we have in law that can cover us and help us in this scenario. So in Kenya, we have something called the Data Protection Act. Now, in the Data Protection Act, basically, it encompasses everything that both the data handlers and the data, the people whose data are being handled, how that data is supposed to be used. So the Data Protection Act, but the one that focuses on what you're talking about is the Act number 24 of 2019. So it's basically in law, it's like the Data Protection Act number 24 of 2019. So okay, so now when we move to what the Data Protection Act 2019 says, it basically highlights one, the principles of data protection, and two, the obligation of data controllers. So I want us to look at just a few points in these two subtopics to kind of see where either we laxed as individuals or where the lenders found a loophole and are exploiting it. So if you look at the principles of data protection as outlined in the law, or in summary, basically it says that the Data Protection Act sets out the principles and obligations of personal data protection. And these are designed to ensure personal data is processed in a lawful, fair, and transparent manner. So lawful in the sense that the data that they use should abide by the Data Protection Act. Fair in the sense that, and transparent, I mean, in the sense that every terms and conditions should be made available to the client, I guess, in this case, and they should be able to read through it and make it known each and every sub point that's there. So if you're telling someone that they'll end up paying 65% annually for a loan, then the government obliges you to tell them beforehand that this is what you're getting yourself into. So now if you look at the principles of data protection, I'll just highlight, I want to go through the entire document, but if you find some time, it's available on the internet, the Data Protection Act of 2019, chapter 4, yeah. So basically, one of the things that it says is integrity and confidentiality. It highlights that personal data must be processed in a manner that ensures appropriate security, including protection against unauthorized or unlawful processing and against accidental loss or damage. So if you're taking someone's data, what we've also found out is these lenders are also in the business of selling data. Remember, data is the new gold. So once you get the app on your phone, it asks for access to your contacts, your images, your location, and then sends this. So even if you don't borrow money, they still make money. So take this and then sell it out to the other company. So the Data Protection Act requires them to treat this data with integrity and confidentiality. So ideally, data between me and the lender should just be between us. It should not be given to any other person. And then it also says here that the data handler is responsible for complying with any of these rules that are here, which is key and also laughable in the sense that the data handlers are the same ones who are not accountable. They're not handling anyone's data responsibly. And then if we look at the obligations of the data controllers, now one of the things we are seeing here is it's on them to ensure the security measures and implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure the security of personal data. So this is on them. So whenever you find your data being used somewhere else, they should not be able to tell you that we had a data breach or anything. It's upon them to ensure that the data they share between you and them is treated securely. And then it's also upon them that the law requires them to obtain consent of data subjects for the processing of their personal data. So we as the clients you need our consent if you're going to be able to sell this data out to any other person. If you're going to be basically any other way you're going to use our data, we must have consented to it. So now these 3 points that we looked at from the Data Protection Act of 2019, we find that one, that consent is implied because when you tick on the terms and conditions, it's implied that you read it. What we are campaigning for and against at the same time is we want, as the public, to be able to read through the terms and conditions. At the same time, we want the data controllers to make it known. Don't hide the interest rates and the other laws in the fine print. Make it known that this is what we charge, this is what we use your data for. If you default, this is what you're going to do. Because I have a feeling if I knew that is what was going to happen to my data, then I won't consent to this. And then also asking them to be accountable and implement whatever the law says. So now we've looked at what the Data Protection Act says, but obviously there are some of the things that have been done before to try and mitigate this. So in 2020, out of when this now started becoming an issue, the Data Protection Act, when it came into law in 2020, a year later, Kenya introduced the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya. So basically, this was supposed to be a group or a body that had all the registered digital lenders, and from there on, then regulation would be easier. So their duty was to regulate digital lenders and protect the interest of borrowers. Now, in as much as this has been done, we are still finding that this one in itself is not enough. So as of January, I think we only had 36 registered, and 481 had also expressed interest. Now, what we're finding is even the 481 that had expressed interest but don't have a licensing to actually do lending in Kenya are also still in the market. Later on in 2018, no, earlier on, sorry, the CBK, the Central Bank of Kenya, had issued regulations requiring all digital lenders to be registered and disclose all applicable charges to borrowers before giving out loans. So this is what we're talking about in the first place. Don't hide the details in the fine print. Make it known, be transparent, be fair about your activities. And the regulations also stipulated that lenders should not abuse consumer data, and borrowers should be given a right to redress in case of any complaints. But now what we are seeing is whenever a complaint arises of a particular app, that app just vanishes and a new one comes up. So you find people complaining about an app, and then a week later, the app is no longer on the Play Store, and you guys don't know where that app went to. Then in 2019 as well, now we're looking at what have been done up to this point. In 2019, CRBs, the Credit Reference Bureaus, partnered with the government to regulate the digital lenders and improve credit information sharing among the financial institutions. Now, this move was aimed to address the issue of the over-indebtedness among borrowers, which was attributed to unregulated lending by digital lenders. And all these three, I'll just give an example of three that have been done in Kenya. And all these three have more or less failed. So giving them a Digital Lenders Association of Kenya hasn't worked. Regulation by the CBK requiring all the lenders to be registered and disclose all applicable charges has worked to some extent. But again, we are seeing that the issue is still at large. The partnership with the CRBs as well, this has also not bore any considerable fruit. So now the question becomes, and this is lastly, our last slide, is how can you help? How can we help? How can we, who are in the data space, who are in the tech space, or whichever space that we are, how can we be in a position to help these people out? So what are some of the suggestions for remedy going forward? So maybe just pose this to the group. Based on the discussion that we've had so far, what are some of the suggestions that you'd have for how we could try and rope this menace in? And open the floor to the group. Okay. Oh, hi, Marcy. Thanks for joining. Yeah, anyone? Marcy, let's hear your voice. Are you in a position to talk? Or you can write it on the chat if you're not in a position to talk, or if you have any suggestions on basically how we could try and have this matter sorted out. There's one participant here. I'm trying to figure out the name. LZGWSVAXP@mosmail.com. Any suggestions? All right. So, hi, Voina. Please feel free to go ahead. You can unmute and share with the group.
This is Voina again. Actually, for a number of years, I've been writing a blog, specialist blog, of course, anonymous, very similar to what you have. I'm just on your page right now, so I may paste it, but it's a bit long, and I'd rather not give the URL to the blog itself, so I'm just going to paste a very short. This is assurance business. This is used by insurers to check the credit worthiness of anybody. So this is like reverse assurance. What they do to us to check our credit worthiness, we just do to the agencies themselves. So I'm just going to paste a very, very short summary, okay?
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that could work as well. So it's basically suggesting a UNO card for the lenders. So if you're going to check our credit worthiness and our lending info, then we should also be able to do the same for you. So I think that's actually a good idea. If we can be able to find out a platform where we have all these apps and we're able to know who has been doing this and this and this, then those who are in actual need can now go and know who to get money from and who not to get money from based on the history that they've had with everyone else. So thank you so much, Vaina. Also, if you look at the slide, the link over there is the link to the initiative that we are coming up with. It's called Mkopo Wazi. Mkopo is basically lending, Wazi is transparent. So if you do Mkopo Wazi, it basically translates to transparent lending. So what you're campaigning for is responsible lending between lenders and their clients. And what the page is actually campaigning for is we're trying to disseminate as much information to the public as possible, so then they can be able to make informed decisions moving forward on what the law says, what the CBK says on lending rates, what are these apps, what are some of the advantages and disadvantages, so that when they're making decisions into going into these apps, they're well informed. So over and above, one of the key issues is get people to know what we are getting into, and then get people to know what they're getting into, and then have them be in a position to make informed decisions based on that. Other than that, I think that will be the end of our session. I'd like to get any questions, any feedback. Yeah, someone needs to talk. Sorry, please just unmute and proceed. Yes, Mercy.
Thank you again for the presentation. I hope you can hear me. And
Yes,
I think this is valuable information for the public to know. So I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you're doing. And I hope the rest of the world or the rest of the country will be able to have this information. And as you said, know what they're getting into. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. Any other question, comment, feedback? Yes. Let me see who will raise their hand again. All right. So I think that will mark the end of our session for today. Thank you guys so much. I maybe just want to have last words from Lewis. I think he's one of the analysts for this space. Maybe can be able to say a word. Hi, Lewis, the floor is yours.
Kim, maybe just to thank you for what you're doing. We're really passionate about the education space and specifically teaching people around the world the importance of the personal data and AI and the different ways in which it can be abused. So thank you for contributing to it, and it was an amazing talk. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Charity, are you in a position to talk? Oh, I can see a chat from Hailey. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. Learned a lot. You can learn more from the website, the treasury.co.ke/Mkopo Wazi, to get to know more about this initiative. And with time, we'll be able to get the input form over there so that people can be able to upload their own experiences, either in anonymous video format or MP3, MP4, or images, just screenshots and links to Twitter handles of the experiences so far, so that this is now an issue that a lot of people get to know more about. All right. In the absence of any other question or comment, I'd like to give you guys back your 5 minutes of the evening. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I think I can be able to read all your names. Thank you so much, Mercy. Thank you, Agatha. Thank you, Charity. Thank you, Lewis. Thank you, LZGWSVAXP at mosaic.com. Thanks, Voina. Thanks, Zealand. And yeah, hope to see you doing more in your careers, in your spaces, and get to talk more about the digital space, both in Kenya and in your resident countries as well. Thank you guys so much. I'll end the call now. Goodbye, Jess.